The Galaxy S9, $719, and S9 Plus, $839, are essentially mirror copies of the Galaxy S8 and S8 Plus. There are some very subtle differences up front. Their upper and lower bezels are a bit slimmer, but outside of that, there aren't any major changes. The power, volume, and Bixby buttons, the latter of which controls Samsung's Bixby digital assistant, are all in the same place as they were on the S8 and S8 Plus, and the S9 and S9 Plus are water resistant like their predecessors. Flip the phones over, though, and Samsung aficionados will notice one much welcomed change. The fingerprint reader has been moved from next to the camera as it was on the S8, to just below it. The previous layout was cumbersome to say the least. Each time I reached for the fingerprint reader, I'd end up running my finger across the camera's lens. It also meant that the reader felt unnaturally high up on the phone. Most smartphone makers try to put the reader closer to the phone's center line to make it easier to reach. Samsung's intelligence scan works by alternating between using facial recognition and the phone's iris scanner to detect that you are who you claim to be. Previous Samsung devices had facial recognition and iris scanning, but this is the first time they've been combined. I used the iPhone X for several months and can only think of a handful of times when Face ID hasn't worked. Most of the time that involved situations like laying in bed or when there was too much direct sunlight to my back. But I've generally been able to hold the iPhone X in a variety of angles and it's unlocked with ease. The iPhone 8 and 8 Plus have LCD screens, which produce attractive colors, but aren't nearly as rich as those found on the S9 or iPhone X. Samsung has also added stereo speakers to both the S9 and S9 Plus. And they sound surprisingly good for smartphone speakers. Next to the iPhone 8, 8 Plus and X, the S9 and S9 Plus produced more vivid sound. At their max volume, the iPhones sounded somewhat tinny. I don't expect most people will spend much time using the S9's speakers, but they'll definitely work in a pinch. The S9's low-light shots aren't without issue, though. When my cat moved with the lighting low, my images turned into blurry messes. So don't expect to get brilliant action shots in such settings. Outside, the S9's produced fantastic photos of everything from trees and street signs to buildings and bicycles. Details were spot on and there was no pixelation to be found. This isn't a difference that will make or break your buying decision. In fact, it's so slight that you'd only notice it if you put the phone's photos side by side. Still, it's worth noting for consumers who are extra particular about their phone's cameras. The problem is that the automatic mode is so finicky that if you don't line up the motion perfectly with your camera and remain completely still, it won't activate. I tried to get videos of pigeons flying away from pedestrians walking down the street, but never managed to succeed. Samsung showed off the feature during a demo of the S9, but that isn't the same as a real-world scenario. Samsung also equipped the S9 Plus with a dual-lens camera setup for telephoto images. The S9 only gets a single lens. Like the iPhone X's Animoji feature, which uses the phone's front camera to transform your face into an emoji that moves with your actions, Samsung is rolling out an augmented reality emoji of its own called AR emoji. Then there is the ability to create your own AR emojis. Instead of using an animated rabbit or cat, you can make an AR emoji that resembles you. At least it's supposed to resemble you. Everyone I tried using the feature with ended up with an AR emoji homunculus. None of the AR emojis we created looked much like us at all. Sure, mine had a beard and I could add glasses, but it could have been any other white guy with glasses and a beard. The real-time translation was particularly impressive, as it was able to read both printed and handwritten text and then lay the English translation on top of it. You can also translate English into other languages, which can be helpful if you're in a foreign country and are trying to communicate with someone. Google has a similar feature, but Samsung's was still amazing to see. The one problem I noticed with the feature is that you can't smile or really move your face very much while trying on the makeup. That's a bit of a bummer since I desperately wanted to take a screenshot of myself making a duck face with hot pink lipstick. Oh well. The S9 and S9 Plus also come with your choice of 64GB, 128GB or 256GB of storage, as well as a microSD card slot for additional space. In other words, you shouldn't run out of storage space with either handset. As far as battery life goes, my original S9 review unit seemed to have issues with its battery which caused it to deplete faster than normal. Samsung assured me that my device likely had some kind of problem and sent me a replacement unit to address the issue. I'll update this review with my experience with that device when I test it. Update: my second S9 proved the issues I had with the first one was an aberration. I used my handset throughout the day and the battery was only down to about 50%. More from Dan, email Daniel Howley at Dowley@. Follow him on Twitter at Daniel Howley. Follow News Pulse Finance on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn.